I wasn't supposed to stay at the wedding that long. I was just a plus one, a name on a guest card, sipping from a glass of champagne that never really tasted like anything. But that's the night I saw her, and nothing after that felt ordinary again. She wasn't the bride. She wasn't even in the spotlight. She was at the far end of the reception hall, laughing with two women her age, all three of them in elegant dresses that spoke of effort, of trying to still belong in rooms that felt too young for them. Later I'd learn they were all divorced, survivors in their own ways, clinging to each other like sisters. But my eyes, they kept finding her. I didn't even know her name. Not then. The first time we really crossed paths was by accident. I'd stepped out into the quiet hallway that led toward the hotel rooms, needing air. My tie was too tight, my head buzzing with music I didn't like. She came around the corner carrying her heels in one hand, her hair loose now, makeup softened by the hours. She looked real. Not polished, not posed. Just real. Sorry, I said, moving to the side too quickly, my shoulder brushing the wallpaper. She smiled, slow, almost amused. You look like you're running away. Maybe I am, I admitted before I could think better of it. Her eyes lingered a second longer than polite. Brown, sharp, but with something tired hiding behind them. She didn't answer, just tilted her head slightly, then kept walking. I should have let her go. But later that night, fate pushed harder. The reception wound down, guests drifted off. I ended up near the elevators, waiting for one to take me up to the wrong floor. I'd gotten the number mixed up. The doors slid open and there she was again, this time with her two friends. They were laughing, voices just a little too loud, the kind of laughter that comes after too many glasses of wine. Hey, it's the runaway, one of them said, pointing at me. I smiled awkwardly, scratching the back of my neck. Guilty. Come on, the other chimed in. We're having a little after-party. Too boring to drink alone. I hesitated. That kind of invite should have been easy to decline. But then she looked at me, not asking, not insisting, just watching. Like she was curious what I'd do. And somehow, that was enough. Their hotel room smelled like perfume and leftover wedding cake. Music played low from someone's phone, the kind of songs people put on when they don't want the night to end. They poured me a drink, laughed too much, told me about their ex-husbands like it was all some inside joke I could never really understand. But the whole time, my attention was fixed on her. The way she sat slightly apart, one leg tucked under the other, fingers tapping the rim of her glass like she wanted to be somewhere else. Or maybe with someone else. I tried not to stare. Tried to be casual. But every time I glanced over, I caught her already looking at me. And not in the careless way her friends did. No, hers was slower, heavier, like she was weighing something she didn't want to admit. At one point, she got up to refill her glass. Passing me, she brushed her hand against mine. Light, so light it could have been nothing. Except she didn't move it away right away. Careful, she said softly, almost under her breath. You might regret being here. I froze. Not because of the words, but because of the way she said them. Like a warning. Like a promise. And before I could ask what she meant, she looked up at me, her lips parting, eyes locked, and in that moment the room, the laughter, the clinking glasses, all of it disappeared. Her hand had only brushed mine for a second, but the weight of it lingered like a burn. I kept replaying it in my head, asking myself if it was an accident, if I imagined it. But then she'd said it, that warning, and the tone was too deliberate to dismiss. Why dangerous? I didn't know. Not yet. But I felt it. Her friends were already losing themselves in stories about their exes, comparing scars, laughing in ways that were a little too sharp. I tried to nod, to follow along, but my mind stayed hooked on her. She didn't laugh the way they did. She smiled, sure, but there was a kind of restraint in it, as if she trained herself to keep certain feelings pressed down. When the other two women finally decided to go smoke on the balcony, she stayed behind. And suddenly it was just us, the music low, the silence heavier than it had any right to be. You don't belong here, she said finally, sipping her wine without looking at me. I could say the same about you, I shot back, surprising even myself. That made her glance at me. A quick flick of the eyes, sharp enough to cut. Then she let out this soft laugh, not amused, more like something cracked through her composure. Touché. I wanted to ask her 1,000 things. Her name, for starters. Why her laugh sounded like it was stitched together with regret. Why she kept staring at me like she was daring me to do something reckless. But all I managed was, "Rough night?" Her glass tilted in her hand. "Rough decade." The words hung there. I should have let them drop. But I couldn't. "Divorce?" She nodded, slow. 2 years ago. You get really good at pretending it doesn't bother you after a while. And just like that, something shifted. She wasn't just some mysterious older woman anymore. She was human. Tired. A little broken. Sitting there barefoot with her dress pulled slightly up around her knees, the straps of her heels dangling from a chair. I told myself not to stare, but every detail lodged itself in my brain, the way her nail polish was chipped at the edges, the faint line near her mouth when she frowned, the way her shoulders tensed before she answered any personal question. Like she wanted to keep everything locked away. "You're staring," she said quietly. Heat rushed to my face. "Sorry. I didn't mean you did." Silence. My heart thudded in my throat. The balcony door opened and her friend's laughter spilled back in. She glanced over, then back at me, lowering her voice just enough that only I could hear. "You should go, before they come back." I almost stood. Almost obeyed. But she reached out, her fingers landing softly on my forearm, warm, deliberate. The kind of touch that stops you in your tracks. "Or," she whispered, "you could stay a little longer." Her fingers on my arm shouldn't have meant anything. Just skin on skin. Just a fleeting gesture in a room that smelled like cheap wine and leftover perfume. But I couldn't shake it. The weight of her touch sat heavier than all the champagne I'd downed that night. I wanted to say something. Ask why she wanted me to stay. Ask what she was seeing when she looked at me with those steady, almost defiant eyes. But the words stuck. The balcony door rattled again. Her friends were still out there, voices carrying between bursts of laughter and silence. We were alone, but not entirely. That should have been enough to jolt me back to reason. Instead, it only sharpened the tension, made everything feel closer, more dangerous. She pulled her hand back slowly, curling her fingers around her glass. "You're what, 23? 24? 22. She exhaled, something between disbelief and resignation. "God. You're just a kid." "I'm not." It came out harsher than I meant. "I'm here. With you. That has to mean something." Her eyes flicked to mine, searching, but she didn't answer right away. The silence stretched, filled only by the muted hum of the music. Finally she said, "You remind me of before." She caught herself, shook her head. "Forget it." "No," I pressed, leaning forward despite myself. "Before what?" Her lips parted, then closed again. She turned slightly away, staring at the rim of her glass. And in that half-second of vulnerability, she looked younger, not in age, but in the way people look when they're carrying too much alone. I wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, to close the space. Instead, I sat frozen, my pulse hammering in my ears. And then, a sharp knock at the door. We both jolted. She set her glass down a little too quickly, red wine sloshing at the rim. "Room service!" a muffled voice called. She exhaled, almost laughing, but there was no humor in it. "Of course." The knock came again. Her friends stirred on the balcony, one of them shouting, "We didn't order anything!" The moment shattered, but not entirely. Because when she turned back to me, her face was still close, closer than it should have been. "You should really go," she whispered, though her body leaned the other way toward me. My throat went dry. I wanted to nod, to stand, to prove I had control. But all I did was sit there, caught in the pull of her gaze. Her hand twitched on the table, almost like she wanted to reach out again but forced herself not to. I swallowed hard. Do you actually want me to go? The corner of her mouth curved, not a smile, but something sharper. She didn't answer. And that silence felt like the closest thing to a confession. The knock at the door faded. The voices on the balcony drifted into laughter again, but none of it mattered. The room had closed in around us, and all that remained was her eyes fixed on mine. You didn't answer, I said softly, the words slipping out before I could reel them back. Her brow furrowed. Answer what? Do you want me to go? She blinked once, like the question hit harder than it should have. Then she set her glass down and leaned back in the chair, folding her arms across her chest as if bracing herself. You think you know what you're asking, she murmured, but you don't. I know enough. I pushed my voice low. I know I can't stop thinking about you. It was reckless. Too blunt. The kind of thing that could break the fragile balance between us. And yet, instead of pulling away, she let out the faintest laugh, the kind that sounded closer to pain than amusement. You're impossible, she whispered. So are you, I shot back. Her eyes softened, but her body stayed tense, every muscle taut as though holding her in place. Do you realize how wrong this is? Yes, I said without hesitation. That made her look at me fully. Really look. Her lips parted, her chest rising in a sharp breath. Then why are you still here? I didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense outside this room. I just shook my head and said, because I don't want to leave. Her hand moved before her words did. Fingers brushing the table, then inching toward mine like they were betraying her better judgment. She stopped short, leaving an inch of air between us that felt heavier than any touch. I promised myself I wouldn't. She trailed off, voice trembling, then looked down at her lap as if ashamed she'd said even that much. What? I asked, leaning forward. She shook her head. Doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Her throat worked as she swallowed, then finally she whispered. I promised myself I wouldn't get pulled into something I can't explain. My heart thudded in my chest. Maybe you don't have to explain it. Her eyes snapped up to mine again, sharp and searching, like she was weighing everything at once. Her friends laughed outside, the muffled sound breaking against the glass door, but inside the room it was so quiet I could hear the faint hitch of her breathing. I opened my mouth to say more, to close the space, but she raised a hand, stopping me mid-breath. Not touching me, just holding me there with the gesture alone. We stayed locked like that. Me half forward, her hand suspended, both of us frozen on the edge of something we couldn't name. And then she whispered the only words that mattered. What happens if we don't stop? Her question, what happens if we don't stop, hung between us like a dare neither of us had the courage to accept out loud. My pulse raced, every instinct screaming to close the distance. But then, something in her face shifted. She pulled back, not far, just enough to put a breath of space between us. Her jaw tightened, her gaze flicking down before meeting mine again. And then she said it. I know you. The words didn't make sense at first. I blinked. What? Her lips pressed together, as if she already regretted saying it. Not well. But I've seen you before. Last summer, at the courthouse. I was filing the divorce papers, you were there. It hit me like cold water. Memories snapped into place, me sitting on a bench outside the clerk's office, waiting for my mother to finish signing her own divorce forms. The heavy air of endings, of lives being split into neat lines on legal pages. And yes, I remembered a woman in a dark dress, sunglasses covering her face, her hands trembling as she clutched a stack of papers. That had been her. You were crying, I murmured, the image clear now. Her eyes flashed, equal parts defensive and vulnerable. I don't cry. You did that day. She looked away sharply, her throat tightening. And now you see why this is wrong. Why I can't stop. I cut in. That doesn't make it wrong. That makes it real. Her breath hitched, just slightly, and for a moment I thought she might believe me. But then the balcony door slid open with a loud clatter. One of her friends stumbled in, laughing too hard, carrying the smell of smoke with her. "Oh! You two look serious," she teased, eyes flicking between us. I jerked back instinctively, guilt flooding my face. But she didn't flinch. She kept her posture calm, almost unreadable. "We were just talking," she said smoothly, voice even. Her friend grinned, oblivious. "Well, don't let me interrupt. I need another drink." She wandered toward the counter, humming to herself. My heart pounded. The spell was broken, but the tension hadn't gone anywhere. If anything, it grew heavier, because now I knew she remembered me. Not just from tonight, not just as some reckless distraction, but from one of the worst days of her life. And still, here we were. As soon as her friend's back was turned, I whispered, "You didn't answer me." She tilted her head, meeting my gaze. "Answer what? What happens if we don't stop?" This time, she didn't look away. Her glassy eyes held mine, steady, full of the truth neither of us had admitted until now. And she whispered back, so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "Then we both lose. Then we both lose." Her words sat heavy in the air, but the way she said them didn't sound final. It sounded like a plea, a warning, and maybe even an invitation all at once. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to ground myself, but my voice came out low, unsteady. "Lose what, exactly? What are we so afraid of?" Her eyes flicked to mine, then away, her hand tightening around the stem of her glass. "You'll think I'm weak if I answer that. I don't think that's possible." That earned me a look, sharp, almost wounded. She held it too long, until her friend rustled behind us, pouring another drink. For a moment I thought the conversation was dead, but then she pushed her glass aside and whispered, "I don't want to feel discarded again. Not by someone who's barely started living his life." Something broke inside me at that. Because beneath the guarded tone, I could hear it, the quiet ache of someone who had been left too many times. I should have pulled back, respected the line she was drawing in the sand. Instead, I found myself saying, "Then don't put me in the same category as them. I'm not here to use you. I'm here because I can't stop wanting to know you." Her breath hitched. And for once, she didn't look away. The friend at the counter yawned, muttered something about calling it a night, and slipped into the bathroom with her phone. The door shut, leaving us in a pocket of silence again. Her shoulders dropped as if a weight slipped loose. "You don't know what you're doing," she murmured. "Maybe not," I admitted. "But I know what this feels like. And I know it's not nothing." She pressed a hand to her temple, then down to her lap, fingers trembling slightly. "God, you're too young to talk like this." I laughed softly, shaking my head. Maybe I just haven't learned to lie to myself yet. That stopped her. Her lips parted, no words coming out, and the silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was charged, fragile, like the air before a storm. I reached out slowly, not daring to close the distance unless she let me. My fingers hovered above hers, waiting. She didn't move away. When I finally touched her hand, she exhaled, shaky, surrendering something she'd been holding in for too long. Her voice was barely audible when she whispered, "If we do this, everything changes." Maybe that's the point. She studied me for what felt like forever, then squeezed my hand, the faintest pressure, but it carried more weight than anything either of us had said. No kiss. No dramatic declarations. Just two people, sitting in the half-light of a hotel room, holding on to a moment that felt like it shouldn't exist, and deciding not to let it go. The bathroom door clicked open, footsteps coming closer. But she didn't release my hand. Not this time. Her friend came out of the bathroom, humming, phone still in hand, oblivious to the way my hand was wrapped in hers. For a second, I thought she'd pull away, pretend nothing happened, tuck her feelings back into that careful armor she wore so well. But she didn't. She held on. Not tight, not dramatic. Just steady. Enough to tell me without words that something had shifted, and she wasn't going to erase it this time. The rest of the night blurred. Her friends eventually collapsed into laughter on the balcony again, wine spilling onto the floor, but I barely noticed. What I remember is the two of us sitting close, our shoulders brushing now and then, not speaking much, because the silence said more than words could. When the party finally fizzled out, I walked her down the quiet hallway. The carpet muffled our steps, the chandeliers overhead humming softly. She carried her heels again, bare feet against the floor. She looked like the woman I had first seen, undone, unguarded. At her door, she paused, turning the key in her hand but not opening it. "You realize nothing about this makes sense, right?" she whispered. I smiled faintly. "Since when does the best part of life ever make sense?" Her laugh was soft, almost disbelieving. She shook her head, but the corner of her mouth curled in a way that gave her away. For the first time, the heaviness in her eyes lifted. Not gone, but lighter. "Maybe I needed to be reminded of that," she admitted. I wanted to kiss her then, wanted it badly, but instead I just said, "Then let me keep reminding you." She looked at me for a long moment, searching, measuring, maybe even waiting for me to falter. But I didn't. And finally, she leaned in, resting her forehead against mine, just for a second. No audience, no noise. Just the quiet acknowledgement that we had stepped over a line, and neither of us regretted it. When she pulled back, she whispered, "Good night." It wasn't goodbye. Reflection. Walking back to my own room, I realized how much had changed in just a few hours. She wasn't just a stranger I'd locked eyes with across a wedding hall anymore. She wasn't just the divorced woman with friends who laughed too loud. She was someone who had carried her pain in silence for too long, and for the first time in a while, let herself be seen. And me? I stopped pretending I was just running away from the noise of the world. I'd found something worth staying for. Not every story is neat. Not every connection comes at the right time, or the right age, or with the approval of everyone around. But sometimes the wrong timing still feels like the right person. And maybe that's enough. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? Speech Balloon, what kind of stories would you like to hear next?